Okay, so you can see Phoenix and Jack the cat are down on the floor, and what they're doing is pinning their stitch line or seam line. One of the biggest mistakes new people make when they're trying to sew is they try to hold the seam line together and sew, and that is never going to work. You will always slip and end up with an incorrect seam. What you want to do is do pins perpendicular to your seam line, like you can see her doing. And then when we cut out the pattern, we did it parallel so that our scissors could run right along the line. We do the opposite when we're sewing, because we are going to sew across our pins and then pull them out. And you want to use just as many pins as it takes to hold your fabric nice and steady, okay? Another thing I would like to point out is that you can see she is sewing on the wrong side of her fabric. We do this because if we sewed on the right side, then all that raw edges that you see would be sticking out for everybody to see. But by sewing this way, those raw edges end up on the inside, and that is what we call the seam allowance. Okay, we're going to move over to the sewing machine and sew. And Phoenix has threaded her machine. She's getting all the thread out to the side and under her presser foot, getting it all nice and aligned properly. You can see that thread going right through the little edges of the presser foot. Your knuckles in the way. Perfect, right in there. Now she's going to slide her pinned fabric under the presser foot. She's going to use that handle to lower it right where you want. You can see that pin is there. And she'll start out by pressing her pedal and starting to sew forward. And you'll notice she's going to go forward and backwards a couple of times by pressing the reverse button. She's tying off the seam. That's what that does, is it knots it so that it doesn't unravel. And you can see she's just sewing over the pins, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be done. And she's going to tie off there at the end. Perfect. Now we're going to pull this out, and you'll see that she'll have to pull it out to the side and cut the thread. Okay, now let's come in close and take a look. There's our seam line. Perfect. And you see all of that excess fabric on the other side of the seam? That is called your seam allowance. And that's what we were talking about earlier. You know, some patterns will have you do an inch, some half an inch, some 5/8 inch. Just read your pattern. But that is your basic stretch stitch. Okay? Then you would need to take this over to an ironing board and iron your seam allowances out. Okay, beautiful.